Hey everyone, it's Matt Fury from Avid here at Sundance 2020 once again with another cool story to share with you. This is my friend Jennifer Vecchiarello here with her film Kajillionaire. Hey JV, tell us about your movie.
Hey, Matt. So I am here with the premiere of Kajillionaire, which is Miranda July's third feature film. It's a sort of comedic heist film about some low-stakes grifters and the story of their daughter, who is played by Evan Rachel Wood, and she's kind of coming to find herself in the midst of this chaotic world.
That sounds like a very hip and cool Sundance kind of movie. How did you become attached to the project?
I had worked with one of the producers prior, and I had worked. Miranda July is an amazing director who also happens to be married to another amazing director, and I'd worked with him on another project as well. So they reached out and kind of came to be.
So the funny thing about Sundance is you come to find out that there's like this network of editors that sort of know each other. You think even with films coming from all over the world, I heard there's like 15,000 that get submitted. That somehow we have a little Avid party and all of a sudden everybody seems to know each other. Do you meet at Sundance? How is this community of independent film editors built?
That's a good question. I mean, it's a small world. It is a small community. And I feel like you're constantly meeting people. You know, I met several new faces last night that I'd never met before, but who had shared mutual friends. And I'd say, you know, you work with one person, they introduce you to some other people at either a mixer or drinks nights or an Avid party or whatever. And obviously social media brings people together, and just trying to go out and support each other's work and attend each other's screenings and give notes and all of that stuff. I think it's good to have a community to do that with. So.
Speaking of screenings, your film premieres tonight. You have a big screening tonight, and it sounds like a very big theater. Any nerves?
Yeah, always nerves. I'm really excited. It's always exciting to share it with an audience, and it's always a little scary too. but I'm excited.
Did you go through, a lot of the bigger films will go through audience test screenings, which editors kind of love and hate, because it's a lot of work, and sometimes you're like, why isn't that working? For a film like this, did you have any audience test screenings, or for indie films, does that not happen so much?
Yeah, I mean, we more refer to them as friends and family. We didn't really do any recruitment screenings. You know, sometimes you'll go to a Cineplex or a mall, and they'll say, those are the target age range, and, you'll actually recruit people who are not familiar with the film. For the most part, ours were more intimate, and we would bring in trusted friends who were either filmmakers or writers or just loved film, perhaps just film lovers, who we knew we could trust, because it's an intimate thing. It's a vulnerable position, and you want to bring in people who will give good advice, who will give honest feedback. I think the honesty is the most important part, too.
What's some good advice or honest feedback you've gotten over the years in your career?
Specifically at screenings like this?
In general, just for a career in editing.
Oh, a career in editing. Well, I'd say you definitely want to always be open to all of you always have to leave your ears open. You can't be defensive about anything, and that can be a very difficult thing because you work very hard on something and you really feel like you've got it right, but it's in order to keep your objectivity, which you're inevitably going to lose, you have to be able to keep an open ear and listen to what anybody has to say, and to try anything. Like any idea that sounds outlandish, you try it, and sometimes it'll shock you. You might hear it and be like, well, that's not going to work. The second act is way too long. We got to do this. And then you try it and you're like, oh, that's brilliant and that's exciting. And I think that's how happy accidents and strokes of genius can happen.
When you first saw the script for Kajillionaire, a lot of times editors are brought in early. They read the script. Did you see any potential trouble spots? Like, oh, that's, I don't know, that could be a tough one to do, or that could be tough to bring together an editorial.
There were not anything that was like incredibly dire, but there were certainly conversations about, this scene might, will this feel like a double beat? Will this feel like something? You're always kind of working together early on. And I wouldn't say that there were any problems or flaws in the script that we were addressing right away, but certainly conversations were had, like, okay, let's read this and see how this is actually going to feel on the screen. And yeah.
Can you give me an idea of the overall production and post-production workflow on the film?
Yeah, well, we shot on ARRI, and we edited Avid DNX 115. We had two systems. It was myself and Christy Leftwich, who's an amazing first assistant editor. We were both working on Avid 864, I believe was the version we were on. We were both working on Mac Pros, the towers. Yeah, I used a lot of Black Magic Fusion throughout.
Yeah, so tell me more. We have a mutual friend, Alan Bell, who's he's pretty hardcore when it comes to doing his own visual effects. Tell me a little more about that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was very lucky. I worked with Alan for many years, and he's taught me so much because he's an incredible editor and storyteller and visual effects artist, and he really embraces the technology in such a way that he kind of passed on to most people he works with, but definitely to me. So I learned a lot from him about how to use the tools that are available for useful storytelling. So a lot of like split screens, speed ramps, fluid morphs, all these things that people are doing now, but I'd be able to use Blackmagic Fusion to do them in such a way that you'd never know, and I do it quite quickly, like a mouth replacement, keeping somebody's mouth shut if we want to cut a line, things like that are just really based on storytelling. They're visual effects that you shouldn't see. But Fusion and Avid and Fusion working together really helped kind of streamline that workflow and enabled us to do these things very quickly without having to get out to the VFX vendor to get a temp and vice versa and all that.
How about on the audio side of things? Do you find that on smaller projects or indie projects, you have to lean in more and do more stuff outside of just core picture editing? Like you gave a great example of visual effects. For audio, editors run hot and cold on it. Some are like, no, I like to do as much sound design and editing and temp music and temp effects in offline as I can. And others like, no, we have a sound team for that. Where do you fall on that?
I love to be working with the sound team as early as possible, but I also like to do as much as I can myself. So I love when the sound team can start early, even if it's not like, exactly cut to picture, even if it's just like, okay, here are some ideas of some backgrounds or some tones, and we did a lot of that on this one. Kent Sparling was constantly giving us tones, and we had some very specific sound design sort of elements that he was sending us that we could lay into the cut. And not necessarily cut specific, so we could kind of play around with layering them so that if we did a temp mix for a screening, we were then able to use those elements that were used in the temp mix and not be hearing anything for the first time when we got to the final mix. But at the same time, I also love building sound beds and sound designs, and Christy Leftwich, who was the first assistant, she also did a lot of that, and she was fabulous at it as well. So it's both, I would say.
Well, it sounds like it was a very positive experience overall. I know you have a big night tonight, a lot to get ready for. I appreciate you dropping by to talk with us about the film. Jennifer, thank you very much for being with us today.
Oh, thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
She's JV. Her film is Kajillionaire. It's screening tonight. That's just another story here from Sundance 2020. I'm Matt Fury from Avid. Stay tuned to all the Avid social channels for more stories like Jennifer's.
Thanks, Emma.